My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing. Hey, everybody that's watching, tuning in, welcome to The Art of Bombing presents Between Bombs. Let's talk about merch. On this Between Bombs episode, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about merch. I've got a lot of things to cover. Just before we get started, if you want to comment and ask questions, by all means, go ahead and leave them comments. Depending on where you're watching this broadcast from, it may appear anonymous on my end, so I think you have to give StreamYard permission, especially if you're watching on Facebook. So just, go ahead and comment. Like I said, it may be anonymous, it may not. Either way, we're gonna get through a lot of information today on merch, so keep that in mind. I welcome the questions. The first thing we're gonna talk about, we're gonna get right into this. I see there's already people watching, so the first thing we're gonna talk about is things that we need to consider before we invest in merch, because that's the thing. Merch is an investment. You're going to have to put a lot of money up front, whether you decide whether or not you want to do t-shirts, or maybe you want to do hats or shot glasses. These are all things we're going to talk about later in this episode, but initially it can be a big investment, because a lot of times when you set up a new design with a printing company or a manufacturing company, there can be setup charges, there's minimums, there's, things like that, that you have to order a certain amount to get certain discounts. So obviously the more you buy, the cheaper it'll be, but it really depends on where you go. But before we even talk about that, I want to talk about the different things you should think about when you're thinking about what you want to sell for merch. As stand-up comedians, this is more geared towards stand-up comedians, obviously, because I'm a stand-up comedian and The Art of Bombing is a comedy podcast. So if other people are watching that are in other forms of entertainment, I'm sure it's very similar. But as a comic, one of the things that I like to consider when I'm thinking about merch, and I think it's very important, is to think about convenience. And what I mean by that is, how convenient is it to travel with? How convenient is it to reorder? How convenient is it for your customers? Are you going to run out, like with t-shirts, you have to have multiple sizes. Well, if you run out of one size, that's possible loss of sales that you have when you're out on the road. And when you're out on the road, it's probably not going to be very convenient to refill your inventory. So that's kind of something to think about. The next thing that I think we need to think about is what you're going to put on your merch. What are you going to put on it that's going to get people to sell? As comedians, a lot of times we put on a joke. We try to find our funniest joke, and then, of course, when we're doing our set, when we do the pitch to sell the merch, we'll say the joke. So obviously, you can always put a joke on there. Think about your logo or graphics, anything like that you want included. You need to think about that, and you also need to think about it from the different perspectives of graphics, as far as the printing areas. A lot of these online sites where you can order merch, they will have printing areas, and they'll have the dimensions and the quality, the pixels and everything that you need to know, the minimum requirements to make a good shirt. Because that's another thing, if you don't have a high res photo graphic, when it prints, it may come out pixelated a little bit, and it's not going to be a very good quality shirt. And that's another thing I think you should think about, graphic artists, getting a graphic artist involved, because they're going to be able to give you exactly what you need in order to meet the requirements for these different printers. Another thing you want to think about is the cost versus resale. And your cost, obviously, is how much you pay per unit for whatever you're selling. Obviously, the cheaper, the better. Typically, T-shirts typically sell for $20 to $25 on the road. I've seen comics, do 20 for a shirt, or do two for 30, or they'll sell them for 25 and they'll do two for 40, or whatever it may be, doing them little combo deals and stuff with their merch. But you got to think about that too when you're putting in your design, because the more colors you add to your design, and the more ink colors, the more the it's going to cost you per unit, because a lot of times these printers, especially with T-shirts, they charge per color. So you can do, and a lot of times they can only do 4 colors. So the more the minimal of your graphic as far as colors go is going to really lower your cost. So if you do a black shirt with just like a white graphic, then it's probably going to be pretty cheap. And a lot of times you can get, they range anywhere from $4 to $6 per shirt, and then you can sell them for $20. That's a $14 profit margin, which is pretty good. And there's other types of merch too with different, like I said, the more you purchase up front, the cheaper they're going to be. So the bigger your profit margin is going to be. I've had in the past, I've sold shot glasses. You can sell them for like $10, and I think I paid less, maybe 50 cents per unit, maybe $1, if that. I don't remember exactly, but they were fairly cheap. They were basically plastic shot glasses. So that's, like I said, that's something you want to think about. There is your cost versus resale. Because you want to make sure whatever you're buying, you want to make sure you're getting the best value for it, but you also want to make sure you're getting good quality. Because if you go cheap and you get a cheap material shirt, or you get the graphic doesn't turn out very good, you're going to end up having a product that's hard to sell when you're on the road, and then now you're just carrying extra baggage with you. So keep that in mind, your cost versus resale. Another thing I already talked about, this was the turnaround to restock. I mentioned that a little bit at the beginning as the convenience that kind of goes with that, but should think about that. How easy is whatever you're ordering going to be to restock? If you do some type of merch, like for instance, maybe pin, they make like the not embroidered, what do they call it, the embossed pins. They take a lot longer to have made. So if you run out, and you're not going to be able to just go online, do your order, and rush shipping on them. You'll be able to rush the shipping, but it's still going to take a while, because they do have a process. There's not as quick of turnaround unless you pay a lot of extra money, but then your cost is going up per unit and you're losing your profit margin. So that's something to consider too. When you're thinking about what kind of merch you want, you need to think about how easy it is when you run out of something to get it restocked. And then the last thing that I want to talk about as far as things to consider is physical inventory versus print on demand or drop shipping. A lot of comics, obviously, when you're on the road, you want to have merch on the road. I get that. I do have merch, and I'm actually show my merch real quick of what I do. Talk a little bit about it. So I'm going to try to get that up there. There we go. So this is a game. It is called Drunk Fu Master. It is a drinking dice game that I sell when I'm out doing live shows out on the road. I sell this for $20. I make them myself. I don't have these manufactured. I do all the artwork on them. I do the wood burning. Everything that's in there, I did myself. So my cost per unit is fairly low on those. Another thing that I have too is, I do stickers, which is good. That was for the Art of Bombing. Then I have, my sticker, and I'll talk more about the different types of merch here in a little bit. But those are the things that I have for physical inventory. And the reason I went that route is over the years, I've had different types of merchandise. Like I said, I've sold T-shirts, I've had shot glasses, I've had things like that. And for me, I got tired one thing, I wanted to have some merch that was unique, something that I'm a big gamer. I do like to have a drink now and again. So for me, creating a drinking game and selling that made more sense. Now, I've had t-shirts, but like I said, one of the big factors for not doing a big physical inventory now is that it's a lot to carry. I got tired of lugging a big suitcase full of shirts everywhere I went, and then when you start traveling by air, that's extra luggage that you have to think about. That's definitely something that, because then if you have to bring an extra bag, depending on how long you're going to be, gone, you have to think about, packing smart, obviously. Then there's the potential of, there's potential of, having to pay more for checked luggage, and that too affects your profit on your sales. So think about that. Like I said, I don't do a lot of physical inventory for shirts anymore. I use the drop shipping now, print on demand. And I'll talk more about that coming up, because I'm going to talk about some other types, because I am actually looking at some other physical inventory. I do have a couple comments and questions, so I'm just going to throw these up here. So Darren asks, how much is the price for your stickers? Now, are you asking how much they cost me to have printed, or are you asking how much I resell them for? Because there's obviously different for the I guess I can answer both. I think I paid like 44 cents per sticker for the big ones, and I think it was like 45 for the die cut, or vice versa. But as far as selling stickers, I'm going to be honest, I really don't put them up for sale. I think on my website I have them up for like $1 or $2 or something like that. But I actually use the stickers more for promotion. When I bought these, I pretty much expense them out as a marketing tool. Because then, to me, it's branding. I want to get, people, I want people to listen to my podcast, and I want people to go check out my comedy. And it's really cool when you can give them something like this. And for me, this is really cheap, like I said, because, you can get these in the more you purchase, the cheaper they are, obviously. But, I bought in quantities of, I think the big vinyl ones, I did 250, and then the die cut ones, I did 200. At a time, and I got a pretty good deal. So like I said, I paid about 44 to 46 cents a piece. But when I do sell them, like if I'm at a show and I decide that I'm going to sell them, what I'll do, instead of doing a set price, because when you're on the road, that's another thing, when you think about what you want to sell and the prices, you got to think about change too. And I should have actually talked about that and things to consider, because, well, we're still talking about things to consider, but I should have talked about that earlier, but as its own entity, I guess. But you have to think about change. If I sell these stickers for $2, most people aren't going to have two $1 bills on them. They're going to probably have a 5, or they're going to have a 10, they're going to have a 20, things like that. So then you have to think about carrying change. So now anytime somebody gives me $2 for one of these stickers, or gives me a 5, I got to give them $3 change. So now I have to carry a bunch of extra cash on me. What I do a lot of times for the stickers, and a lot, I'll just say, pay what you will, pay what you want. So, if they give me $1, I'll give them to them. And a lot of times you find when you do that with pricing merch, people are willing to give more than what it's really worth, because they just kind of want to help out. But I would, like I said, I don't really sell the stickers. It's more of a marketing for me. Let's see. We've got... You made this. Oh, well, I can't check that out right now because I'm live. But I'll have to check that out. And then he says, print on demand is rad. Yes, it is, Justin. The print on demand is really good, especially if you're a comic with a website, because then you can sell stuff on your website. And the best part about print on demand or drop shipping, you don't have to put any money up front on most of the sites. You go create a web store, and then you can link it to your website. And when a customer buys a product, then that company, whatever you're using, will ship it out to that customer, and you just get a commission essentially off that sale, whatever it might be. And it varies on the different drop shipping sites. And I'm going to talk more about the different sites coming up. So those are things to consider. Just to recap on that, you want to think about the convenience. You want to think about your pricing. You want to think about what you're going to put on it. You want to think about your cost versus resale, and you want to think about whether or not you want to do physical inventory or drop shipping, and you want to think about the turnaround on restocking whatever you decide on. So we're going to move on. And the next thing I want to talk about regarding merch are the types of merch. And this will be quick because we kind of know. It's pretty much the types of merch are pretty easy. I mean, there's a lot of common ones, but for the most part, it's pretty much anything you can put a joke or a graphic on and get somebody to buy. I mean, the common things obviously are t-shirts, hats, bandanas, beer koozies, shot glasses, CDs, DVDs. You've got, buttons, stickers, then there's novelty items like bottle openers, keychains. I mean, pretty much anything you can put a logo on or get printed, you could potentially sell. I mean, I've seen people do little multi-tools, like a knife and a pen and different things like that all in one thing. Like I said, I sell my dice game, which is a drinking game. There's also and that's something too. When I made this game for drinking, and that's something I learned as I sold it. It is a pretty popular seller, and it usually does pretty good, but I'm limiting who can purchase this because I made it just for drinking, people who drink. Not everybody drinks. I got to thinking about that, and then I changed the format. So it's still a drinking game, but I also made an alternate rule version of the game that people can play without drinking. So that way it helps keep it marketable to all audiences. Because that's another thing, and going back to things to consider, is you need to think about your audiences and what they're going to want. I mean, and that kind of goes back into whatever joke you put on. It's got to be something that they're going to want to purchase. It's got to be something that they're going to want to wear and help represent you and your brand. I've had shirts in the past where the very first shirt that I did was a pretty funny shirt. People would come up after the shows and they would say, "Hey, this is a really funny shirt. This is hilarious." But I don't think I would wear it because the graphics were not necessarily like dirty or gross, but they were on the verge, I guess, because basically what it was a man's chest with man boobs and hair up here, and and then it said my eyes are up here. I thought the design was pretty funny, the graphic was pretty funny for it, but people were like, I just don't think I would wear it. Therefore, I don't want to buy it. They don't want to just buy a t-shirt to hang in their closet. Not everybody is me. I do that. I buy t-shirts because they're funny and don't wear them. I'm weird like that. I collect t-shirts. So that's something to think about too. But like I said, there's all kinds of different types of merch that you can do. It's really up to you to decide what you want representing your brand. If you're a non-drinker and you're, a sober person, you probably don't want to sell koozies. That might not be a thing to do if you don't want to promote drinking. CDs, DVDs, those are kind of harder to sell too these days because a lot of people don't watch DVDs or they don't listen to CDs. They stream everything. But there's a good alternative to that, and that's if you've recorded an album, you can go get USB flash drives and preload your album on that and then sell the flash drives. And that's something I was going to talk about a little later in the episode, a little more too, because that's a nice little trick, because you can buy, USBs in bulk online, on Amazon fairly cheap. I think you can get like 50, what is it, like 20 of them for like $50 or whatever. So you can like build it real low end, where you're spending maybe couple bucks, and then you can sell that for $10 to $15 at a show. So it's a good turnaround. There's a good profit margin there. Now I'm going to talk about where you can get merch because there's a lot of different areas online, obviously. If you're getting like shirts or printing or even marketing type materials, the first thing, depending on where you're located, the first thing you can do is just look locally. Because there's a lot of local print shops that can do a lot of stuff. They might be a little more expensive than online, but you're going to save on shipping because that's the other thing. If you have a local screen printer or a printing company that you can use, you're saving on shipping. So what you may pay a little extra for per unit, you may be saving for on the shipping. So it may just weigh out. But here's the one of the nice things about working with a local company is that when you run out, if you're out on the road and you run out, you can make a call to your screen printer and get your order in, or when you get back from your gigs you can just go down there, and if you have a good working relationship with them and you're a returning customer and you're doing return business, they may help expedite your order when you run out. So you build that good relationship and that can help you down the road. Obviously, there's a lot of options online because that's where we are. We're in a virtual world these days, and we get everything online. Now I'm going to talk about places, like I said, different places where you can get merch online. I'm going to start with a couple places where you can get physical merch. I've always had really good luck with ooshirts.com. That's a website for screen printing. I can't remember if they do anything other than shirts, but I did a lot of the shirts that I've did when I've had physical shirts, that's where I ordered them if I couldn't use a local screen printer. Another company that is good for physical, merchandise is discountmugs.com because they do all kinds of stuff. They believe they do t-shirts, they do obviously mugs, they do shot glasses. I think they maybe do hats. But they have a whole bunch of different items that you can use for your logos and your things to sell. And they have pretty good prices too and pretty good shipping. I've always had pretty good luck with them. If you want to sell online and do drop shipping, the first two here, you've got Shopify. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Shopify. It's an e-commerce. You can set up a store, but you can integrate it with your own website. That's an option. Another option that's very similar to that is Printful. Same thing. It's drop shipping. There's no inventory cost on your end. It integrates with your website. Some other sites that don't integrate very well with your website, but they're the same thing where you can set up an online store. You got teespring.com. I actually I got this shirt that I'm wearing. This is from teespring.com. I ordered my own shirt. The tapestry behind me, that's actually, I got that on, actually, I missed the link. I apologize. I thought I had it in there, but I don't. tpublic.com is another one, very similar to Teespring. They sell pretty similar products. TeePublic is where I got the t-shirt. Teespring is where I got the tapestry, because that's the thing. Even though they're drop shipping type items, I wanted to know what people were going to be getting, so I ordered them myself as well, because I want to make sure if somebody goes onto my website and they buy something from one of these places, I wanted to make sure they were getting a good quality. And I got my stuff, and I'm like, this is pretty good quality. So now I'm not afraid of selling that stuff. Another print-on-demand site is cafepress.com. They have all kinds of items. Now, they all have pros and cons, and we're not going to get into a lot of them. But the thing is, with like TeePublic, you don't really get to decide how much your products sell for. They set the price, and then you get a commission off that. With Teespring and Cafe Press, you get to choose the how much you make off a product. So you get to decide. They have, they tell you what it's going to cost to make, and then you put a price on there, however much you want to profit. So say they say a t-shirt costs them $10 to make. If you put it up for or if you put it up for $20, you're going to make a $10 profit on that. The nice thing about this too, with drop shipping, you don't have to handle any shipping. You don't have to do any of that stuff. There's no trips to the post office, or shipping, or any of that stuff. So that's something to consider. But like I said, going back, if you really want physical inventory, I would find a local screen printer if it's an option. If it's not, or if you just can't afford it, if the quotes are too high, which that could be, Shirts is really good. And I know there's some other ones. I didn't want to put everything in here. As far as stickers go, I use printrunner.com on my big vinyl ones, these ones here. And I was very happy with how they turned out. They have other marketing materials that you can print on there as well if you want to do brochures and flyers and things like that. If you do corporate comedy, I don't know. Posters, that's another thing as far as merch goes. If you have you're doing a tour and you get posters made of the tour poster, and then you can sell the tour poster after the show. You can sign them. You can get them printed fairly cheap. You probably get them cheap, printed for like 50 cents a piece, and then sell them for $5. That's a pretty good profit margin. Another good place for stickers is Sticker Mule. That's where I got the die cut stickers. They're always offering, there's always coupon codes and stuff where you can save like 10% or whatever it might be on there. So that's something, a lot of times people that order, we get referral codes and things like that. So you can get discounts on there. And they were really good. I used them, and they had a really good turnaround on my stickers. The stickers turned out beautiful. They're good quality. In fact, this one that you're looking at, the reason I still have it is because this was in my coat, and it went through the washing machine and the dryer, or went through the washing machine. I took it out before it went to the dryer. So that's still in good shape for going through a washing machine. So that just goes to show you the quality. And I took the back off of it to see if it was still sticky, and it was still sticky. So good quality from Sticker Mule. So I would definitely recommend them on that. Oh, I had stuff falling over here. I'm going to go see if we have any questions, because I'm going to be wrapping up here in just a minute. Go see. All right, nothing new here. All right, now I'm just going to give some final thoughts on merchandise. I think, okay, so when it comes to physical inventory, I really think you need to consider, like I said, things that are convenient to carry. I honestly think hats and koozies are the way to go. The nice thing about, and the reason I like these is because hats, for the most part, are one size fits all. You don't have to worry about running out of a particular size and then losing a sale. If you run out, you run out, but you'll be out of everything, which means then you did really good on your sales. Koozies, they're fairly cheap to have made. You can, a lot of people that go to comedy shows are drinking. They're going to, the summertime, they go out and go do outdoor stuff where they want those koozies. Like I said, they're fairly cheap to make. You can get a bunch of them. I know a comic friend of mine, he does really well with koozies, and he just does, what I was talking about earlier, where he sells them for, he just lets people pay what they want. He says, hey, I got these at the end of the show. Pay me what you want for a koozie. And he does really well selling them. So those are kind of my two go-tos if I was going to do physical inventory. And I'm actually looking into having some hats made based on a joke. Now, I'd mentioned earlier, instead of selling CDs, you can sell your album with using a preloaded USB drive, flash drive. And that's good too, because if you're not with a record label, if you just go and you do like a really good recording and you want to do, if you want to sell that recording, you can just load it yourself. That's the nice thing about it. It's all independent. So then if you're on the road too and you run out of them, you can go get some more flash drives and then just, as long as you have your computer and stuff with you. Because that's the thing I like to consider too, is what happens if I run out when I'm on the road. The nice thing about the game, as long as I have my supplies with me, and even if I don't, I can go to a Hobby Lobby, get everything I need to make my game. So if I run out on the road, I can make more if I absolutely feel like I need to. I'm going to pause real quick because I do have another question. What is a good night for sales on merchandise? A good night? Honestly, I don't know if there's a better night than others. I mean, I really feel like it just depends on your performance and how well the people watching the show, how well they enjoyed the show. If they had a good time and they got a few drinks in them and they, they're probably going to want to buy your merch if you have it. I mean, I've had nights where I thought, oh man, there was a lot of people at the show, and I thought for sure I was going to sell a bunch of merch, and nothing. Maybe one thing sold. And then the next night there wasn't even hardly any people at the show, and was compared to the night the previous show, the audience was a lot lower, and I did way better on sales. So I don't have a magic day or number on that. I think just a lot of it depends on, there's a lot of variables you got to think about, but the most important variable is being funny and having a product. There's a couple things. It's being funny and likable and having a good product that people are going to want to buy. And what I mean by, I don't mean like, you don't have to go out of your way. Like I said, I have my game, but a good product on a t-shirt means a good joke or something that people are going to want to wear. That's the biggest thing, is especially with t-shirts, it's got to be something that people are going to want to wear. That's why funny t-shirts always sell so well online with, just ridiculous sayings or whatever, because people want to wear them things. They want to show that they have a sense of humor and they're ready to have a good time, I guess. So I think those are the big factors with that. Thank you, Darren, for the question. Going back to the thoughts, I think if you can afford it, when you're thinking about designing, either whether it's a t-shirt, a hat, or graphic or whatever you're thinking about, if you have a joke and you have an idea, you can go online and do the stuff yourself, but I highly recommend, if you can afford it. And a lot of times there's a lot of freelance graphic designers that'll work fairly decent for a decent price. There's apps like Fiverr where you can hire that out. I would definitely, if you can, try to have a graphic person do it, and you're going to get what you pay for. And an example of that is my old logo for the Art of Bombing. I got on Fiverr. Well, actually, I've evolved over the periods of time. So the first one was just a sketch that my friend did that had nothing to do with this podcast, and I just thought it was funny. The second logo I got on Fiverr. I paid $5 for it. It served its purpose. On branding, didn't look very good, honestly. I mean, I bought a hat with the logo on it, and it's a cool hat, but the logo just didn't scream, hey, I want to represent this brand. This logo you're seeing behind me, the Art of Bombing comic bomb logo, I just paid for that a couple months ago. Great graphic designer, Michelle Mildred. She's out of the Twin Cities. And I got what I paid for, an amazing graphic. And this looks good on merchandise. It looks good on the web. It looks good on branding. When people see it, it's eye-catching. It gets their attention. So think about that. Definitely think about and consider working with a graphic designer if you can, because that's going to be huge for you. And then if you have the means, if you're a crafty person when it comes to your merch, think of something you can make yourself and do yourself, maybe it's artwork. Maybe in your spare time, you draw. You could do little sketches or little comic strips. I've seen that. I've seen a comic after a show was selling little, not comic strips, but comics where it was just a one, almost like the political cartoons. I don't know that they were political, but it was like that, where it was just one panel with a joke, and it was just a little drawing. They were selling them after a show. I make my game. I invented it, and I can do it, make it all myself. There's other, like I said, there's all kinds of things you could do. If you can do things with beads, you could, make little beaded uh, bracelets with jokes or something on them or whatever. I mean, I don't know that people going to a comedy show are going to want to buy jewelry per se, but the point is if you can find something that you can make yourself, you're giving yourself something to do. If you run out, you can get it. Your turnaround really fast on getting it restocked, but you're also going to reduce your overhead because you're doing it yourself. So you're cutting out middleman essentially. That's what I really like about my merch now is I don't have to worry about anybody else. If I run out, I just got to get this lazy guy to go make some more. And that's what I did this week because I have a show coming up tonight actually. And I was like, oh man, I've only got a couple sets of dice. I need to make some. So I spent a couple days this week, and it's also rewarding to have a hobby because it gets you off the internet and out of your head for a little bit. So definitely consider that if you can, if you have the means, think of something you can make. That pretty much has what I wanted to talk about. I just kind of wanted to do kind of a brief conversation about it, but I'll stay live I see there's a few people watching still. So if there's any more questions, we will just shoot through a Q&A right now. I hope the people watching, I hope you found this information useful. And you can reach out to me if you have any further questions, where I'm on the Facebook, but otherwise you can get me email at dan@blitzedentertainment.com. Try to help if I can. And if you're not already, make sure you follow the podcast, artofbombingpod.com. We're on all social media platforms at artofbombingpod. Appreciate the support there. I'm also going to be trying to focus a little bit of attention on the podcast on our Patreon page. We do have a Patreon page. If you'd like to get involved and support financially, you can do that there, but definitely not required. So put that back up. Got Facebook user. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know why it came in anonymous, but whoever this person is, that is a good question. How do you set up merch so it's ready after a show? Very good question. That you're going to want to talk to, and that also brings this up too. Wherever you're performing, you want to make sure you have permission to sell merch. And, it doesn't happen very often that, especially if you're a host or if you're the feature, you want to probably talk to the headliner, make sure that they're okay with it. Make sure, if they're selling wherever the setup is, the headliner is going to get priority. You want to give the headliner priority because they're the star of the show. They're the reason people came out to the show. So, but a lot of where you set up and how to set up depends on the venue. You want to ask the venue, working at comedy clubs, a lot of times they have a designated space. And usually, when I'm featuring and depending on who's headlining, if I know them well enough, what I'll do is when they're up on stage and I know they're wrapping up, if they're in their next, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, I'll go to wherever the designated area is to set up the merch, and I will set up the merch table, and I'll try to help set theirs up too. So when they get off stage, they're not rushing out to try to set up their merch. It's already set up. But usually, for the most part, the best place to set up, if it's possible, is wherever people are exiting the show. So if there's a designated exit where people are going to be leaving a showroom, or if there's certain doors where more people are going to go out of, and the venue should be able to help you out with that. You're going to want to set up wherever people are going to be coming through. So even if they don't stop and buy, at least they have to walk past you, because then maybe they will on impulse. If they don't have, because that's a lot of things. A lot of times people will buy merch just based on impulse. They'll be like, oh, that was a fun show. And then forget that you're selling merch because you're the middle. And then they come out and they're like, oh yeah, I want this, and then they see you there. So, like I said, I always try to set up, usually when the whoever's headlining, whenever they get lit, that's usually when I try to get set up. And depending on where you're working in different clubs, like some clubs, the headliner might have people doing his merch, and you don't have to worry about that. You just have to worry about your own. Or as the headliner, maybe the club's got a situation for you. Well, they'll have somebody there to help you, or they'll get you set up when you're on stage. Then you don't have to worry about it. All you have to do is go out there. And that brings me to another thing I should have, this is a good question because it opened up some thought process here. Taking money, that's something you got to think about too. And honestly, for the longest time, I only took cash, and that was not smart. You want to be able to take cash and credit. And if you take cash, you want to make sure you have change. You got to make sure you have, if you're selling shirts for $20, you might think, oh, I don't have to worry about that. But I guarantee you the first person's going to come up and they're going to hand you a 50, or they're going to want to hand you 100, and then you're like, oh, sorry, I got to go try to make change. And then now you're hunting down somebody from the staff trying to get change. And now not only is that customer waiting, but now you're intruding on the club's work. They're trying to get cleaned up for the next show or closed for the night, whatever it may be. And now they got to stop and focus on you. So it's kind of distracting to them. So you want to make sure you have change. But credit cards are pretty easy to accept with mobile technology because you can get Square readers. There's PayPal Here, which is basically, it's a credit, same thing as Square, but you use your PayPal account, essentially. They have Bluetooth connectivity. I have, mine's a Bluetooth. It just connects to my phone. I can accept, it swipes. It also does chips. And it works pretty good. If it gets approved, they do a little sign. It works out pretty well for that. So definitely make sure if you're selling merch, you have ways to take money. And I definitely suggest being able to take credit cards at some capacity along with cash and having change. Now, for me, like I said, when I set up my merch, depending on where I'm at and, obviously the venue, I try to be considerate of the headliner, but if I'm headlining, I guess I don't know. I set up wherever they tell me I can set up. That's the best answer. Always get permission. And like I said, this is something that doesn't happen very often, but sometimes some venues require that you pay a commission on your merch. And so might not even be worth selling merch if you have to give them a bunch of your money that you make. Not many venues do that these days, and I think the ones that are bigger venues where you've got big headliners like people like Fluffy that are selling probably thousands of dollars worth of merch at a show, and they probably require a big booth as opposed to just a little table. All right. Well, I hope that answered that question. Thank you. Like I said, it's coming up anonymous on that one. I'm not sure who that question came from, but thank you very much. That was a great question, and I hope I answered it. Do we have any more questions? Should we wrap up? Appreciate everybody that's been watching, tuning in on a Saturday. Everybody that's been watching or listening to the podcast. We got some great episodes coming up. We're almost to episode 200 and almost 4 years that I've been doing this podcast. So that's pretty awesome. And I wouldn't be able to do that if there wasn't people listening and watching and enjoying this content. Because that's what this is all about, is getting the content and content that you're going to like. All right. Whoever that user was says thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I'm going to give it probably 2 more minutes. So if you have any more questions, throw them in there. Let's get them answered. I'll do my best to answer with the knowledge that I have. Like I said, I've been doing comedy for a while and I've had different forms of merch. I'm nowhere near an expert, but definitely have a little bit of insight into it. And again, I want to thank Jenny Lou Rusi for suggesting this topic. I've been asking for suggestions on things that comics wanted to hear more about so I could talk about on the Between Bombs live stream. And she suggested merch. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. And that's why I decided to do that one. So here we are, talking about merch. All right. Give it just a little bit more time. Go. I think doesn't seem like there's going to be any more questions. I do, like I said, appreciate all of you, and we'll give it just one more minute. We're counting down. This is where I stall. It's the final countdown. Okay, I will not sing. I will not torture the people watching with my terrible singing. Hope you guys had a good time watching this, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you guys have a great day, whatever you had planned. Comedy somewhat getting back, I guess. I have a live show tonight I'm pretty excited about. Hopefully it goes well. I got to see if I remember how to do comedy because I haven't did a long show in a while. It'll be fun. It'll be a good time. All right. Any final questions? Here we go. This is it. All right. I don't see any questions coming in. I want to thank you guys all again so much for tuning in to the Art of Bombing Presents Between Bombs. Let's talk about merch. The videos there. Make sure you like and you can share the video. Share all the content and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't, wherever you listen to the podcast. All right. Have a great Saturday. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.